Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? We'll let the guys from RPI trickle in if they can make it on. But it's at least good to have you guys here, Deep, Ohio State. I know we've talked a couple times about the project, so I'm really excited to see how you guys have done. Michael, are we waiting for anybody else on your end, or is it just you again?
It's just me again. I'll carry the. I'll make enough noise for more people.
Okay, no, I didn't. I know you said Terry might make one of the calls, so I didn't know if we were waiting or not. Um, but let's go ahead and get started. So Deep, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so welcome guys, this is ESW Ohio State speaking, and we've called our project Rainwater Harvesting on the Scott Laboratory, which will become obvious in a few moments. Maybe? My presentation just, there we go. Okay, so the initial problem was identified during the initial proposal submission in February. And so what we found was that Scott Laboratory was amongst the highest contributors to water usage on Ohio State's campus. And just looking at the straight cost breakdown, this is, an insane amount. But this also told us that it is a building that has the largest room to improve, just because that's what we had heard through multiple and various other sources on campus. From there, I just wanted to introduce what the building kind of looks like to people that might not know. And so the area highlighted in red right over here is the area of the roof that we're kind of really looking at, because for a rainwater harvesting system, you need to utilize like rainwater that runs off like rooftop areas, and then you can collect them in cisterns or bins or whatever you choose to collect them in. And so the area of that section was approximately 25,000 square feet, which is, gigantic, which also helps to improve the amount of water that you can collect. And from there, we identified our stakeholders, and obviously it would be the Ohio State University because it's an Ohio State building. But in particular, it would be the Office of Energy and Environment and the Energy Services and Sustainability Office, which is a subdivision of the OEE. And on top of that, Timothy Roofing would also be another stakeholder because he was the entire building coordinator. And so we would also have to work very closely with him if we wanted to implement a system such as this. From there, we recognized that this problem statement was a little bit bigger than just what the LCA software provided us with and was capable of doing, and so we had to make our own assumptions to do calculations for what kind of environmental impact that we would be able to do. And so we found that the Columbus water treatment plant utilizes most of its energy from AEP, so we just assumed that it was about 100% energy consumption from AEP. Then we learned that AEP burns I want to say 99% coal, so we just assumed that was about 100 because it's close enough. And we found from a government website that on average for every kilowatt hour produced from coal, it releases about 2.1 pounds of CO2. And then we went ahead to assume that we would capture 100% of the water that fell on top of the roof and into our bins, because this just helped to simplify the calculations. Otherwise, there was no reliable, realistic way to measure what our actual water capture rate was, because that would require a differential with data that was not available to us. From there, we well, this went way too far. Sorry. From there, we calculated our environmental impact, and this was done through an analysis through a lot of kind of internet searching for studies of how water is treated and what kind of energy is used. And we found that it's based on region is water consumption, but a University of Michigan study stated that on average it uses about, if you get groundwater, for every 1 million gallons treated, it takes about 1,824 kilowatt hours. And so the water from the Columbus City water is surface water, but that's an easy calculation to figure out on average what the energy would be needed. And we found that, when you save 600,000 gallons of water, you can save approximately 5,000 kilowatt hours every single year, which is, that's a great number to have. And not only that, it would also prevent over 10,000 pounds of CO2 from being released into the atmosphere every year, which is, an astronomical number. And later we'll show what the significance of that is compared to what the output is from actually building the system. And it also decreases stormwater runoff, which is a big problem in cities because it leads to lots of erosion, and especially since we have the Olentangy River right next to us, which has also had lots of recent problems. This would decrease, erosion, and it would lead like erosion control, etc. for the implementation of such a system. And now I'd like to move on to what Sustainable Minds' software was able to do to us. And so, Rob, would you mind passing it off to Purav?
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Hello? Okay. So with respect to how we actually use the software, instead of analyzing the product of the system, we decided to analyze the materials that would go into the system itself. So for each of our concepts, we had 4 components, which would be the water tank, the pipe system, the latex paint in order to protect the pipe system from being under UV light, and sodium carbonate to neutralize the acid rain and therefore protect the water pipe system inside Scott Lab itself. So the way we estimated the amount of water that the system would collect over its lifetime was based off the area of the roof that we were looking at, rainfall statistics in Ohio, and the lifetime of the components of the system. We found out that the lifetime of our piping system would be around 35 years based off the materials we were going to use for it. We chose our function unit to be 10,000 gallons, and based off that, we figured out that the system would serve 2,071 functional units over its entire lifetime. What we decided the materials we decided to compare are materials that are commonly used for these kinds of systems. So for our tank, we chose between high-density polyethylene or stainless steel. For the piping, we chose between polyvinyl chloride piping or cross-linked polyethylene pipeline. And we also decided to analyze the tank size in our analysis in order to find out whether the tank size had significant ecological impacts that need to be considered when choosing tank size, or whether the impacts were insignificant and therefore we could focus on the economic advantages or disadvantages of certain tank sizes. And with respect to how we actually got our figures, a lot of it came based off estimations, based off like where we wanted to implement our system. So we took estimations of the building's dimensions, and based off the layout of existing drainage systems for the rooftop, we found out the amount of piping that would be required to channel all that water from the rooftop draining system to a single tank on the ground. And once we had our estimation for the length of pipe we would need, we used supplier specification to find out the amount of material that would go into making that system. Another example would be how we calculated the amount of sodium carbonate we would need. Over the system's lifetime, it would collect about 20,700,000 gallons of water. And using basic acid-base chemistry, we found out that around 100 kilograms of sodium carbonate would be required in order to neutralize all the water from the average pH of rainfall in Ohio, which is around 4.6 to 6.0, which is safe enough to pass through Scott Lab's water pipe system. And now we're going to look at the results of our analysis. So if you could pass it over to Patrick.
Hey there, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so thank you, Parov, and we'll discuss our results. And so, as Parov was mentioning, we wanted to see how all of our concepts performed in terms of manufacturing stage in the system bill of materials. And so we set our reference concept to be PVC piping with the high-density polyethylene tank. And so based off that, we could see that the stainless steel material utilized in the manufacturing stage would have the worst environmental record, whereas the concepts utilizing the high-density polyethylene tank were much better at having a better environmental record. And so on top of that, the PEX piping proves to be a much better choice of material than the PVC piping. And lastly, as we can see here, the change in performance, or the decline, is roughly about 2%. So we could say that it's really not making much of an impact on the environment when we're increasing the size of the tank. And so lastly, as Rob mentioned, we could go into more economic analysis of how large of a water collection tank that we would like to use. And I think I'll go back to Deep, who is with Aaron to discuss these considerations. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me? All right. I am Aaron. I am with Deep at the moment, actually. So I will walk you through the economic analysis that we did on a variety of tanks. Basically, we analyzed different tank sizes to see which one would be economically viable for each of the possibilities. So I used a break-even analysis in a spreadsheet to see how many months it would take to outweigh the cost of the tank itself. So as you see, I analyzed for the first company. I chose this company based on they were not as pricey as the other companies, and they had a large variety of tanks, so I thought this would be a good outside of local company to reach out to. So I'll walk you through the calculation. We took the tank size and the tank's cost, and then to find the savings, we used the $0.008 per gallon, which Deep calculated earlier on. And I took the average tanks collected per year, which I found based on the rainfall, the annual rainfall per year, and I averaged it out. So then I calculated the savings per year by multiplying it by the tank savings per tank. And then I did the same per month and savings per month based on the monthly rainfall. And then I used a break-even analysis below. As you can see, I used a tool called GoalSeek, where it works as if you express a linear relationship to set cost equal to revenue, and then you can find how many months it takes to put cost equal to revenue. It's pretty cool. And then we also calculated using the Raymond Brothers LLC. It's actually a local venue, and we figured this would be a lot cheaper because it would not require transportation, and it would be very easy to acquire the cisterns. And there's the break-even analysis below, just like the other one. Before I go into the recommendations, we think it is best to use the Rain Brothers LLC because it is local, as I said. And we've used the break-even analysis to determine whether, if we want to choose a cistern that is not as costly because we want it to pay off sooner, then we'll choose the lower one. And then we'll choose the largest one if we don't care how long it will take. It will pay off eventually in lifetime because rain is constant and we will eventually profit. Environmentally, it will save a ton of CO2, it will be released into the atmosphere. Economically, the system will pay for itself over time, as I said, and will profit. Looking ahead, we actually have other places at OSU that have done this in Hallett. They had 3 cisterns, all 5,000 gallons, so they saved 15,000 gallons of water, which is awesome. And Skylab has even greater potential because it might even be a greater surface area, so we could collect even more water than that. And we feel like we could do this through Climate Action Plan at Ohio State, where they took 6 buildings, and they're actually going into them and trying to reduce the cost inside the building. Skylab is one of them, but they're only doing the interior in Skylab. And so if we were to do this ourselves, which we plan to, it will, this is more exterior and it's separate from their project, so we'll save them even more money. And we have a great shot at the Coca-Cola Sustainability Grant, which offers students with sustainability proposals to save, to get money to help them, their organizations, and there's a possible $15,000 choice. And we think we have a great shot at that, and we actually plan to implement this within the next few months.
questions?
Yeah, a few. Well done, guys.
All right, thanks.
So I'll jump in with just a couple of questions. One, just generically, picking the right size of the tank must have something to do with the efficiency with which you can collect enough water when it's raining and not run out of it when it stops raining.
Right. And so that is something that is brought up. And so what we were thinking about kind of doing is probably buying a few 5,000-gallon tanks just because they're a little bit smaller and easier to store somewhere around Scott. It wouldn't be as big of an eyesore because we would probably do above ground rather than a rooftop or in grounds just because that would be the easiest to implement and the less people that like, toes to step on. On top of that, we would probably do a few of them, like maybe 2 or 3 months, like what Outlet Hall did, just so that we would constantly have a giant inflow. Plus Ohio, like when it rains, it pours kind of ordeal, so that if we can capture the most amount of water at once, we'd probably be the best option. Does that kind of answer the question?
And then the other question I had, when you did the analysis of the component parts in sustainable mines, did you get the results you expected, and were the order of magnitude what you expected? Or what insights did it actually give you?
One thing that came up as we were making estimations for the amount of rainfall the system would collect, it was definitely more than we thought. The thing about the roof was around 25,000 square feet, and to think that over 35 years, over 20 million gallons of water will be collected during the system's lifetime, which we estimated would be around 35 years. That was on a much higher order of magnitude than we expected at first, considering that only around like about 39 inches of rainfall occur in Ohio every year. Another thing that was very interesting while we were doing research on the cost of using domestic water, we found out that it's fractions of a cent per gallon. So we were actually very surprised to find out that our system, at first we thought that the system may not be very effective at saving the university money, but after we found out the order of magnitude that the water that can be collected by the system, we were surprised and glad to find out that the system would actually be very beneficial in terms of amount of revenue it can generate for Ohio State University.
Good. And I was specifically, with the sustainable mines model, when you looked at the different tank materials and the different pipe materials, was it what you expected? And like I said, was the order of magnitude interesting to you?
One thing that surprised me, at least looking at this software, just like how great of a difference there was between the high-density polyethylene and stainless steel. Another thing was that PEX piping and PVC piping are very similar, but based off their analysis, or based off the results of our analysis, the difference between the two actually ended up being pretty great, to the point where the most important factor that we found out in choosing material came from the choice of piping rather than the choice of tank material. I guess that was definitely like one of the more surprising aspects of the analysis.
Okay, good. We're all about promoting learning. So, well done.
Thanks. Hopefully we surprised and amazed with stuff.
Alex, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great presentation, guys. A great project that you put together here. I had a question, actually, kind of following on something you started to ask about, Michael. What kind of assumptions did you make about the usage rates of the water that would be collected with the system? How does that vary, or what kind of storm runoff were you trying to design for, or size the system for?
Okay, so to answer, like, what kind of different ideas, like, the rate at which water was to leave the system, we kind of assumed that it would leave rather quickly within probably days of the tank being filled. We assumed that it would leave the system just because we collected a lot of data from, like, the ESS, which have their own utility measurement website, and so Plus, we also were in contact with Tim Rufin, who gave us like monthly breakdowns for cubic feet of water that the building used, and it's like astronomical. Like the amount of water that we would be able to collect would not hold for longer than a couple of days, just based off average daily consumption in that building. And so, I guess our initial assumption would be that the tanks would empty before the next rainfall that would fill them up. And then for we also found that we could implement this system not only for because initially we just thought that we could use it for bathrooms and other things on the interior of the building, but even if we use it for purely irrigation purposes, because Scott Lab has its own irrigation system, it's one of the few on campus, at least in the state floor, that has its independent lawn that it has to water and make sure that it's healthy. We found that even just utilizing the irrigation system would empty our tanks, if we use 10 to 15,000 gallons. So I guess our basic assumption was that they would not stay full for too long.
Yeah, no, that's. I don't obviously know the weather patterns very well in Ohio, so I was just curious as to that. It's answers my question well. Thanks. I was just curious how that those calculations worked out. So, for instance, out here where I am in San Francisco, rainwater storage, you definitely assume that you capture as much as you can in a major storm event because it's all going to be gone before the next one. So that's interesting to hear that you guys had the same issue. The other question I was just kind of looking forward. So you said you're applying for this Coca-Cola sustainability grant. Thinking about that, what if you get that? What are kind of the next steps that you're looking at for this project, or is the university looking at?
So the next steps. So we're in contact with Carlos Lugo, who's actually part of the Office of Student Life, who's one of the kind of people that are in charge of distributing this grant and even taking applications. And so our next steps would be based off what Carlos said, and then another man, Paul Lauren, who's the director of kind of student outreach at the Office of Energy and Environment. They both kind of recommended starting with a prototype solution first and showing how it can be done on a small scale building, something that just really any tiny prototypes about how the design and everything would work, and then actually moving forward with that and getting the money. And so we would hire out Rain Brothers LLC, who actually also did the work on Howlett Hall, so they kind of know how to work with the university. And so we would use that money to help show them what our design would be and ask them to implement the piping and everything else that would be necessary for this kind of system.
Very cool. I hope that you guys get that opportunity and get some fundraising. If there are things that we can do to help support you in that, or ways that you can use our assistance, let me know, and we'll see what we can do to help you out in moving forward with that next stage.
Okay. Yeah. That would be great.
Yeah. I'd like to congratulate you. This is really impressive, particularly having watched the scope shift and narrow as the project's gone on. It seems like you found something that is really good. You can ask a good question and get a good answer. And it's really interesting to see it applied. Kind of a random other note, there are a bunch of folks from OSU here at the conference that I'm at, and one of them presented on the same building, but on carbon and energy efficiency changes that they were looking at.
Was it Professor Bobby's Bakshi Squeeze?
Yeah, I have to go talk to him because he's here, and we haven't actually formally haven't had a conversation yet. But
he's actually our organization advisor.
Right. You're the grad student who was presenting mentioned that. We got into a conversation later.
Okay. That's great.
Yep.
That's awesome.
But no, it's cool to see both sides of that, and yeah, you guys, it's very impressive stuff, and I agree that I hope you get the chance to move forward with implementation, and we'd definitely like to see as that goes forward, because we want to, help you advertise what you've done. So.
Okay. Yeah, that would be awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
Well, Michael, do you have any other questions or comments for these guys here?
No, I think we don't need to keep lavishing them just because the others haven't turned out. Great job, like Alex says. I think if they can get tight and get a cost number on this and push wherever it needs pushing to get it funded, it's one of these things where people say, oh, we should, but we don't. This sounds like a classic example of where should turns into could quite quickly with a sort of 12-month to 24-month payback if they can get, the right stakeholder group to push the button on it.
Absolutely.
We agree.
As I say, yeah, keep us updated on your progress as you keep moving forward with this with the university. And fantastic job. As far as the other group, Michael, don't see them here. I'll connect with Ray and see what went on, and maybe if you have some availability next week, we can get them and the UBC guys together for one last time to hear what they have to do, what they did.
Yeah, let's try. It's difficult time for everybody with graduation and things.
We'll make it happen. I at least want to hear what they've done. I'm sure Alex does too. So I'd love to include you in that, loop you in, and we'll hear from them in a couple days. I hope.
Yeah, and I will have more time next week to go.
Okay, fantastic. But thanks guys from OSU for being here. Thanks Michael and Alex. Yeah, keep us updated as you keep moving forward. Michael, Alex, I'll be in touch with you guys about connecting with the other teams, and then I'll post all these recordings online as soon as we have them all so that everybody can share.
Really quick, sorry. Really quick question. Sorry to interrupt. So we wrote a kind of like an internal paper that outlined all of this, but in greater detail because obviously we had a time constraint. Would you guys like to see that paper, or should we just hold on to that as our own internal work?
We would absolutely love to see that and read through, get a better understanding of the project, and then share it around within our groups. If that's all right.
Yeah, that's great. I will email it to you sometime tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you, Deep. All right. Well, then I guess thanks everybody for being here, and have a great afternoon or evening.
Yeah, it's beer time I have, so have fun, guys.
Yeah, take care.